Because most people in the academy are on the left, a good strategy for the left side of the culture wars is to promote solidarity. Now, an effective strategy on the right for academics would be to promote free speech, open discourse. I would like to describe a tricky dilemma that campuses, this is university and college campuses, have when it comes to the culture wars and the mission of the university. This is relevant to me because I'm a college professor and I work with some groups that sort of think about these issues. Now, here's the problem. We live in a time when we need to sort of bolster our commitment to the values of liberal democracy and also the values of sort of science and the epistemic commons. And epistemic commons sounds super jargony, but it's simply, how do we know what's true and what's not true? How do we understand the world? And of course, the academy, academics, that's where a lot of the information about our understanding of reality and truth and justice comes from. So the universities serve this really important purpose right now. And for the universities and colleges to protect the methods we have for establishing what is real, what is true, what is false, how do we think about the world, how do we think about truth, for the academy to do a good job of that, it needs to be grounded in some of the principles of the scientific method, such as trying to falsify ideas rather than trying to prove your own ideas, or at least having a tension between here's something I think is true and why I think it's true. You actually need people who will challenge that to sort of say, actually, this is why it might be false, or here's some evidence that might indicate it's false. And the scientific method is basically, if an idea withstands a bunch of attempted falsification for a long period of time, you don't necessarily know that it's true, but it's a lot more likely that it's true. And so it's really important to have a space in the university for ideas to be challenged. Now, how does this relate to the culture wars? Because I think there's different layers of the culture wars, and we kind of clump those layers together in our heads. And to think clearly about what's going on, I think it's necessary to separate out the different elements of the culture wars. So the most basic element of the culture wars is the public policy stances that each side takes. Now, I don't believe there are only two sides to the culture war. I actually think there's various sides, but to explain it, I'm going to present it as if there are two sides. So this layer is something that includes policy stances, like policy on abortion or gun rights or whatever. That's one layer. Now, there's also a strategic layer, which is not about what policies should be implemented, but really more about how do we gain power for our side so that our side can implement those policies. And in different spaces, there are going to be different optimal strategies for the sides based on where those sides sort of have a foothold, the types of people who take up arms for those sides. So one of the strategic layers here is, what is the best strategy in the online space? And if you read Jonathan Rauch's book, The Constitution of Knowledge, which has deeply influenced my thinking, he argues that actually the right uses trolling as a strategy online, which is basically just bullying people and putting misinformation out there with the intention of sort of getting under people's skin and just polluting the online environment with junk that's not real information grounded in even what the poster believes is truth. So by using that strategy, that's an intimidation strategy. And oftentimes that happens where someone's trying to present a side on the left that's perhaps a valid point. The trolls come in and sort of try to intimidate that person for saying that in a way that is just designed to get them riled up and make fun of them and be mean to them. And one of the problems here is when that kind of trolling happens so often, that makes people afraid to post, afraid to even put their ideas out there. And so that's how trolling might be a good strategy for the right. For the left, the online strategy tends to be cancel culture, or sort of the witch hunt, where you find something that someone in power says that doesn't go along with your views, and maybe you misinterpret it, or maybe you take it out of context, and you get a bunch of people to sort of pile on and try to get that person canceled. And that has the same effect of making people afraid to present views that are on the right or against the left. So both of those strategies actually had the same effect of creating fear in the other side for people who might want to express a viewpoint or an idea on that side. So that's a strategic layer of the culture wars. Now, what about the strategy in the academic space on the right and on the left? Well, because most people in the academy are on the left, a good strategy for the left side of the culture wars is to promote solidarity, to promote people getting together and linking arms and moving forward with their ideas. That's actually an effective strategy if you want to come into a space where you already have the majority of people agreeing with you. An appropriate strategy for people on the right side of culture wars, if you're on campus, is to promote open inquiry, free expression, is to promote ways that conservatives can come in and sort of have more speaking space in the academic setting. Now, there's a place for both of those strategies. Like, if we think of academic spaces as partially the spaces where future leaders are trained and created, you want your future leaders to be capable of creating solidarity, of being part of something with solidarity. Like, that's a skill you might want them to learn. But you also want them to be able to interact across ideas, to listen to people who think differently than them. Leaders who can't listen to different factions of people they're leading, that's not going to be a good leader. If the leader is sort of just getting into a position of leadership to sort of advocate for their own position and only listen to the people who agree with them, not good leadership. And there's also the problem that if you want to create good ideas in a university, you do need disagreement. You do need open discourse where ideas can be challenged, because that's how the scientific process works. So one of the tricky things for someone like me who cares a lot about open discourse and creating an information environment that people can trust is that how you do that is creating this open discourse, which also happens to be a strategy of the right in the culture wars. So you might imagine different types of people coming into the space that promotes open inquiry and dialogue and free speech. And one type of person might be someone who is really just on the right. They really just want the right to win the culture wars, and they use open inquiry and free speech as a strategy to gain points in the culture wars. That's one type of person who might promote open inquiry and free discourse in universities. Now, on the other end of the spectrum is someone like me who is not rooting for the right or the left. I think both sides have a lot of incredibly valid points, and I'm frustrated that there's so little listening going on between the sides. In fact, I hate the culture wars, but I'm strongly for an environment in the academic setting with open inquiry, free discourse, challenging each other's ideas, not bullying people when they present ideas, but challenging them in a way that's supportive, that's generative. That's something that I dearly miss on campuses. I think campuses don't have enough of that vibrant conversation, and we're losing a little bit of ground on our very ability to produce quality information because it's harder to challenge ideas, which is how the scientific process works. We need legitimate attempts at disconfirmation for information to be valid. So if I go in and try to promote open inquiry, free discourse, people creating spaces where they can speak ideas that others might not like and challenge ideas. If I want that, oftentimes people like me will be accused of being a Trojan horse for the right. And I'm not. Now, can I disprove that I'm not a Trojan horse for the right? Well, people who understand the depth of my views on both the right and the left sort of know I'm not. But most people who make those accusations aren't going to sort of go through the process of actually understanding where I'm coming from and my thoughts. Now, it's not going to stop me. I'm still going to promote free discourse, which I think works best in a really supportive environment where people are good at listening and two-way conversations, where people are courageous to challenge even their friends, and where people develop like a taste for speaking across difference.